Greetings, programs, and welcome back to my photo montage reconstruction of how I built my Proton Pack. So I was following the instructions in Vinny's DIY, do-it-yourself, aluminum parts thread, and I placed the order for all my aluminum cylinders. Then I went to order from the other website all the caps that went on. And it said, I put like $12 worth of caps in my cart, and it said I had to place a $100 minimum order. Now, what would have worked is if I'd ordered from Speedy Metals all the cylinders and ordered a 1 foot by 1 foot, 1/8 inch aluminum plate. So if you're going to order from Speedy Metals, grab that plate while you're there and find you somebody that can cut aluminum and weld it on here. I didn't do that. I didn't have the foresight to do that.
August 18th, 2012, I received my package from Speedy Metals containing all of my aluminum cylinders. Now, as you can see in this photo, I intentionally ordered my booster tube too long so I would have excess to cut down, as well as the booster plug on the inside. As you can tell from this photo, my order not only included hollow cylinders, but a couple of rods cut into very short cylinders for the EDA nipples. I decided in the end not to use the metal pieces, just use what had been molded on the fiberglass shell, although having the one that had the bluing agent on it, as you can see here at left, actually came in handy later. Also around this time, I received my accurate LC1 Alice frame straps. So now, these were something that GETX had sourced and made available at a very reasonable price. I got in very low down on the list, and Julian very generously offered me his spot so I could get the last match set. So big thanks to both of them. So with no caps, and quite confidentially, with no saw that would cut the aluminum, I just boxed up the aluminum and put it aside for later. I got back to drilling and tapping. As you can see here, I slightly changed the position for this elbow lagree from the indicated dimple on the side of the fiberglass shell. This was, if I remember correctly, another detail that I was consulting the Life magazine photo to sort of double-check placement of things. I thought whoever molded these resin copies of elbow lagree did a really good job matching the gray color, but I wanted to add the metallic accents where they were supposed to be. So I wrapped them up in masking tape and I shoved some Q-tips in the open holes. The Q-tips gave me a handle to turn them around while I was painting. Gave them all a coat of gold paint. Then I peeled off the masking tape, and hey, they looked pretty doggone good already. But the way I had done it, the gold paint went all the way to the edge of the gray, and it should have been inset. So I took a very fine-tip paintbrush and some solvent, and I ate away just that outer ring of gold paint. Now here you're seeing a photo of an actual screen-used pack that someone opened up, and I love the detail of the marking fluid, or the bluing agent, that had been put on the aluminum prior to it being cut. I knew if I was going to attempt this detail that no one would ever see when my pack was assembled, it needed to be done before the L brackets were riveted in place. And so since one of the pieces that I had ordered from Speedy Metals had arrived with marking fluid on it, I used that piece to browse around through spray paint that I already had on hand and find one that was a pretty good match. Of course, like so many other details on the pack, this was something I eventually redid. I stripped the paint completely off, bought a real marking fluid that I found online, painted it again, and truth be told, I liked this color paint better than the real stuff. So with the fake marking agent in place, it was time to start attaching those L brackets. First thing I did was put the shell over it and kind of judge where the L brackets needed to be on the inside, trace their positions in pencil. The next thing I did was drill the holes through the L brackets where they needed to be attached to the shell. And yeah, I accidentally drilled a couple of holes through my plastic patio table. I got some of the holes too far apart and some of the holes too close together, but I put the L brackets back on, and then I drilled the holes through the shell itself. Next, I used this Rivet Gun, which was $5 from Harbor Freight Tools, but big thanks to Vinny for letting me know about that, and I started attaching the rivets. I didn't quite get them as perfect as I would have liked. In fact, down towards the bottom, there's two that overlap. I could have tried to drill through them, get them out of there, epoxy putty everything back together, and try again, but I figure if anybody's staring at a part of the Proton Pack that is hidden by my butt and telling me a detail is wrong, they are more than anal. So I put the shell back on it and drilled and tapped the holes through the L brackets and shell itself where the socket head cap screws will thread to hold everything together. This picture is the very first time that the shell, the motherboard, and the Alice frame were all attached together. Now, right here on this corner, I didn't quite get the hole exactly where I wanted it, so I epoxy puttied over it and tried again. I also finally put some epoxy putty in that dimple on the side of the cyclotron and touched up some other details here and there that needed some epoxy putty attention. Then I began to sand everything down smooth in those areas where I'd added the epoxy putty, and I gave it a coat of primer. Now, confidentially, this is not the first coat of primer it had. I had already painted the thing once with silver paint under the black paint. I didn't like that effect. I tried it again with a coat of primer, and I didn't like that, and I stripped it. So this time I was using a sandable automotive primer. A little bit more expensive, but in the end, well worth it. Once the shell was primed, I put it back on top of the motherboard, and I started adding gray paint over those areas that had exposed bluing agents. I thought it looked really cool like this, although it did have some crackling in a couple of areas that needed to be sanded down and then repainted. That was why the sandable primer recommended by my friend Bo Matthews was a really good idea. I was intrigued by something I read online about using barbecue black for your Proton Pack, and so this time I did the edge around the bottom of the pack where the MOBO was exposed first. The MOBO looked even better with the black outline around the blue marking fluid. Now, I did have some crackling occur again, but that was easy enough to fix. A little bit more sanding, another coat of paint. And then I flopped the thing over and started doing the other side of it black. Then I started to paint the shell. The barbecue black looked really good going on, but as it dried, it started to look way too light in color and way too matte. Oh, this picture physically hurts me to look at it. I just wish I could jump right back through the aperture of the camera to that moment in time and make a different choice. You see, I had forgotten one very crucial step about barbecue black. Once it's dry, you're supposed to buff it to a slight sheen using a towel or a bath cloth or something. And just moments after this photo was taken, I decided, in my ignorance, to put a coat of satin black over top of the barbecue black. There was some sort of funky reaction between the two paints, and despite having gone to great lengths to leave no texture on my pack, suddenly it was covered with this speckled crap. Now I know some people want texture on their packs, but I didn't want it on mine. I don't know if it was the humidity, I don't know if it was the two brands of paint, I don't know what caused it, but I was physically ill looking at it, and I had to walk away from the thing for about a week. So from August 24th until August the 31st, I did nothing on the Proton Pack aside from construct a little foam core mock-up of an ion arm just to put all my resistors on it and see what it would look like. I kept weighing my options, and I kept thinking, do I move forward, do I move backward? It was going to be really difficult to strip paint off this thing yet again. But in the end, that's what I decided to do. I was going to manually remove 3 coats of paint from this fiberglass shell. Bear in mind, this was 2 months before Halloween, and I was directing a play at the time that opened 2 weeks before Halloween, so I didn't have a lot of spare time to work on this. In fact, it took me, at stops and starts, 2 full weeks to get this thing back down to fiberglass. But they say it's darkest before the dawn. So this is a good stopping point for this chapter, and hopefully in the next chapter it'll be nothing but good decisions. Stay tuned!